I'll start with the overall basics. Why we're all here, right? The interest of getting funding from National Science Foundation for the Small Business Innovation Research Grant Program. This is a opportunity for us to get free money for your startup. I put a put an asterisk there because yeah, technically it's free and it's non-dilutive, which is great. It's a competition though, and so there's a lot of hard work that goes into winning uh, the grant award. You're going up against others that are also applying. So, free and with an asterisk there. There's a large pot of overall money that the federal government is giving out. Even with the rockiness that you've seen in the news, there's still grant awards that are flowing, and actually for the for-profits that are applying, there's less instability for the for-profit world, specifically the SBIR program. In fact, we're watching legislation that it may even be expanded, but we'll see how that advances. So, there's a large amount of money. Essentially, there's a legislative requirement that any agency that has $100 million or more in R&D budget that they must set aside money for small businesses. And so the SBIR program essentially cuts across all the different agencies, and there are these grant programs, the SBIR programs. I'll continue to shorten that to SBIR. Some people call them SBIR. I don't, but you can. So the SBIR program or STTR program, if you're doing a tech transfer from a university, if a university has the IP and you need to transfer the IP to your company, then you would do an STTR. But typically, we're focusing here on the SBIR program. So, like I said, there's a large pot of money, and we think that even with the current climate, we won't see drastic cuts to the overall SBIR program, and in total, maybe some additions. But it's depending on which agency, though. So some agencies may, be hit harder than others when we actually see the reconciliation. So, overall, there's a timeline here. You know, finding the right fit for your tech, for your idea, for the opportunities that are available out there. Which agency do we go to? Which solicitation do we pursue? That's a lot of work, a big funnel that needs to be whittled down. It takes a lot of time to figure out what's a good fit for you and your tech. And then, responding to the solicitation, right? So now that you've found the right solicitation that's a good fit for you, and you go through all of the requirements, typically these solicitations are anywhere from 30 to 60 pages with maybe additional documents that are guiding for the agency level, and all of the different attachments, not just the narrative pieces and budget development, but all of the different ancillary documents or attachments that you have to add to it. So, we typically see a good estimate of the overall total for the process is about 200 hours worth of work. So, obviously, taking that on, as a solo entrepreneur or as a single person can be pretty daunting. Doable, but daunting. Certainly that time gets split up, once you have partners that you're working with to help carry some of the water that it takes to complete all of the requirements in the solicitation. So yeah, like I said, there's budgets, by LOIs, we mean letters of interest. So you'll need to get sometimes letters from third parties that are, completely objective about your program that basically says, yes, this is a really interesting idea. We would really like to see this in the marketplace. There's lots of different potential sources that you could go get letters from, but that requires communication with third parties, right? And so just getting on their calendars, getting the meetings set up with them, having the conversations with them, getting their responses takes time, and it's time that's out of your control. And so the 200 hours is just the time that it takes on doing the work, right? But then when you start to factor in that you might have external people that you're having to communicate to, sometimes it can stretch out the overall timeline. You won't be able to cram 200 hours in the last week before the proposals due because you'll need to get responses from third parties and you can't control their calendar. So just wanted to call that out, that that's all part of this process. I'm sorry, go ahead. What's this one? So this is the National Science Foundation Small Business Innovation Research Grant Program, just generally. So it's not a particular one, but just the overall NSF SBIR. Hopefully that answers your question, but please do try again if you'd like. So overview. So Scout was started to assist with this process. It is an arduous process. This tool was created to facilitate that process and to alleviate that burden of time, leveraging the current AI tools that are available to us. But if you've ever tried to just use ChatGPT to write your proposal, you will find out very quickly that it's not enough. So this platform essentially leverages those advances, but builds on that with expertise from career grant writers such as myself. Um, so it was started from that experience of writing grants, experiencing that pain, and then realizing that there's got to be a better way to do this. Can we develop a tool to actually help with the proposal writing process? And so that's the genesis of Scout. Um, and I'm really excited to be a part of it, being a part of a SaaS company that, really leverages our expertise as grant proposal writers, and then seeing the tool come into formation for what we need. And so it's a really exciting journey here. So like I was saying, you have the first step is identifying the right opportunity, right? So that's a tool, a feature in the platform. So you can essentially upload some materials, and then it will search through all of the opportunities and compare those opportunities with your materials, and then make recommendations based on what you've uploaded. And so you'll see essentially some obvious ones like the SBIR program, but then you'll also see others. There are other solicitations that are out there that could be of interest, and eligibility could include for-profit companies, or if the eligibility is only restricted to, say, a university or to a nonprofit, it's certainly worth considering opportunities to make partnerships where they might be the primary applicant. Your partner as a nonprofit entity might be the primary applicant, and you could be a subawardee. So wanted to point that out because there are lots of opportunities, and my recommendation is to just cast more lines because of the low success rate generally of proposals. And so just wanted to throw that out there as an opportunity to widen your scope for what would be a potentially good match for a solicitation or grant opportunity. So once you've identified a good grant opportunity, um, it in our platform, if we already have the templates set up tailored to that solicitation, then you can start generating the proposal in response to all of the sections of the solicitation, and you essentially upload any of your existing documents, pitch decks, business plans, anything like that, that it can draw from and then start to develop the text. So it's sort of a blend of pre-prompting that we've put in, as experts in the field, and a review feature that is sort of under the hood before it's even produced. And then it goes section by section, building on the previous section that was developed, which is really cool. So you can essentially start with that high level, build out the idea, tailor it if there's anything that you want to change, and then it will continue to leverage that section as it develops the next section. So it builds on the previous ones that you've reviewed, and then brings in the next section and pulls all of our parameters from the pre-prompting that we've done under the hood. So a little bit more about Scout. Like I mentioned, the founders had experience in this space, really thought that there's a better way. And so Tim and Stacy started this company as co-founders from more of the tech background on Tim's side, more of the proposal writing on Stacy's side, and so this really is a balance of the two that we're providing with this platform. We've got the SaaS side, but we also have the human expertise to bring into the loop. So we've got a fairly large team here, and I should say my background, I've been in the proposal writing industry for more than 15 years. Not just SBIRs, but basically all the above. Worked for universities, worked as a consultant for government agencies, local government, for-profit companies, nonprofits, education agencies, deep tech from AI to psychology to linking, brain machine interfaces, right? It pretty much all the above. The topic, I'm agnostic about the topic. My expertise is on the proposal writing side and what the agencies are looking to see and how we can bring together your ideas in a way that not only meets the requirements for all of the federal legalese that comes with the solicitations, but also how to make a compelling proposal that's going to win. So I've helped raise more than 150 million in grant funding over my career, and that's not counting the business to business proposal contracts that I've also helped secure as well. Okay, so let's dive into this a little bit more. So, like I mentioned, there's the SBIR program. There's also the Small Business Technology Transfer program, STTR. So that is a split in the type of program. So you'll know if you need a university partner for um, uh, the licensing of the IP. If you don't need that, then SBIR is your route. So that's the more typical route. Um, if you need a university partner for other reasons, like they're going to carry out a service of some kind, then you can actually still do an SBIR and look at a direct cost contract line item for that university partner. So I just like to point that out because university partnership does not necessarily require you to do an STTR. So, and then just to dig in a little bit on the mission here, these agencies have a certain focus or mission, and tailoring the proposal and pitch to each of the different agencies is really important. So just specifically about NSF, right? The background being post-World War II, uh, new agency created to develop the partnership between government and researchers and funding the right research that would help the prosperity of our citizens generally. So it's much more fundamental science focused, right? The technological breakthroughs, something that's new, novel, innovative in the field. So I say all of that to point out that, could be that there is a healthcare application, um, but if the focus of the grant-funded research is on the R&D for a fundamental technology that is being developed, oh, and by the way, it has a healthcare application, then it could still be of interest to NSF as opposed to National Institutes of Health. So they do highlight programs that they've funded that have ended up being, really critical components or devices in the medical field, and NSF funded the origins of the research and development that ended up becoming those devices, like the PCR. The PCR machine they highlight as essentially primarily started by NSF funding. So NSF goes through three phases. So there's an initial phase. So phase one, you can apply for up to 305,000. That's including your indirects. Um, so that's the overall total amount. And typically it's about a year worth of a timeline. Um, so you could go lower on both of those, but I don't recommend that. Typically, use the full year. Sometimes things take longer than you think. Um, once you complete a phase one, you can go on to phase two. They have supplemental funding that they can add to it as well. phase 3 for commercialization. So you sort of build on your successes and start to get, more funding from the same agency, and then you can also look at other agencies as well. There's nothing stopping you from getting an SBIR from NSF and then also getting an SBIR from DoD, Department of Defense, Department of Energy, or any of the other agencies. And some companies amass several of these. They can bring in several before you start to run into some limitations, but at that point, it's a good problem to have. So, do you qualify? So, the first thing to consider is that if you're majority owned by a US citizen, right? So, 51% or better, you need to be a US citizen. There are ways that even if you're foreign owned, there are programs that you could still qualify for, but it requires a lot of documentation and it's tough. It can be done, but it's tough. So you're free and clear if you're 51% or better US owned. And then for the PI, they just want to be sure that you're a actual employee of the company. So as the PI, not necessarily at time of application, right? At time of proposal, it kind of doesn't matter. It's at time of award. So you have to figure you're putting in a proposal. It usually takes 6 to 9 months before everything is done, review and negotiations, contracting. So by that time, if you're going to be, committed to the company and being primarily employed by the company, then that's what qualifies you to be the principal investigator or PI. Yeah, you'll need to be actually registered with the SBA, Small Business Administration, and grants.gov, and I believe you're going to need incorporation in order to have that registration done. Yeah, so you will need to have the registrations done before you can even start the application within the company's profile. So, sorry if that throws a wrench in your works, but yes, I would definitely get the incorporation done first and then start immediately on the grants.gov registrations, which, like I mentioned before, can add some time because you're relying on the government to reply and approve all of those. So it typically takes about 1 to 3 months, depending on any difficulties getting registered. But we recommend that as being one of the first things that you do if this is something that you're serious about going after. Any other questions about the eligibility of the company? And then company size, we typically don't run into people that have any trouble with the number of employees at 500 or less. So let me know if that's a problem for you. And then non-duplication of awards. So as I mentioned, you can submit multiple proposals, and I recommend that to different agencies. What you can't do is get basically double dipping, right? You can't get money for work that you're already doing that is funded by another agency already. So you will have to report current and pending support. And if you already have a grant to do that work, then you can't get another grant to do the same work. Now you can get another grant to do supplementary work that is done in parallel. So that's the way that you can look at it is here is a lane of work that is being done for particular outcomes or outputs, and then separately another grant that is done for other outputs, outcomes, and they can be complementary to your overall platform or your overall company, but they cannot be the same work. Oh, and one other thing about the PI that I want to mention, you don't necessarily need to be the CEO of the company either to be the PI, nor do you need to have a PhD or any higher degree. The qualifications of your experience will shine through with your biosketch that you upload. So if the topic of the proposal is aligned with your experience, then you will be fine to be a principal investigator. And you don't necessarily need to be the CEO. The CEO may be busy with other things, and so they want someone else to be the PI of this grant program, and that is also typical as well. So the PI is just the leader of the grant-funded work. A lot here. Basically, there are different areas that you'll need to cover in the proposal. One is the technological innovation, and that's really a majority of it. It's most of the actual writing is going to be done on the tech innovation side. There will be some on the team. Um, it's like 7 pages for the tech innovation. It's like 1 to 2 pages on the team, 2 to 3 pages on the commercialization plan. And then the alignment needs to shine throughout the whole document. But just to orient you on the importance of the different areas that need to be covered, basically all bases need to be covered, but the tech innovation part is going to be the majority focus for these proposals. We've got a couple of deadlines coming up, and this program is a annual program. It's an existing standing solicitation that basically has multiple deadlines within it. And so the next deadline is July 2nd, which is really close. So if you're not already started on this program, I wouldn't recommend really trying to go after a July 2nd, unless you just happen to have previously written grant proposal material that you can leverage. So, let's chat if that's the case, but that would be a tight deadline if you're just new to this whole idea. November 5th would be a better recommendation for you. So if you're totally new to this area, I would look at the November 5th deadline as being the next real deadline. And then we are actually doing essentially cohort models, classes, basically. Once we enroll folks, I think the next cohort starts June 30th. And we have like a 5 to 6 week plan that we lay out, and we cover each of the bases for across those 5 to 6 weeks to get you prepared for that November 5th deadline. The first step being the pitch to NSF SBIR. So the overall process here, essentially, NSF has a bit of a unique process in that they start with a project pitch. So you don't have to have anything registered for the project pitch. The project pitch is fairly simple. It's basically a web form. You create an account, you get essentially text boxes that you put in text, and then submit the form. If they're interested in your idea, they will invite you to submit a full proposal. That's where you'll need the registration ready, is that full proposal. So the pitch is that first step to see if you get invited to move forward, and then you will start the full proposal after that. With the cohort model that we're doing, we're essentially going to go ahead and encourage folks to develop the pitch, submit the pitch, and then go ahead and start writing the full proposal. And then if the invite comes in as a positive, then you've already made headway. And then even if it's a negative, then we can redo the pitch and try again and see what we got wrong. So that's the first step here. Any questions on this before I move on? Because there's I think a lot more to cover here. Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. I love that. So, it's interesting. Preliminary data can be helpful, and I certainly would encourage finding ways to come up with some preliminary data, even if you don't currently have it, but just while developing the proposal, let's find a way to come up with something. You can go too far. So on the one hand, you don't want to say you have no preliminary data. On the other hand, you also don't want to say that you have so much preliminary data that you already know that it's going to work. Well, now they don't need to fund you, right? Like why do you need the money to do the R&D then? So I will put in that note of caution that you don't want to overemphasize the preliminary data, right? Like if you've already got it figured out, and then if you start using phrases like using commercial off-the-shelf software or something like that, the big killer for their review is going to be, oh, this is incremental engineering and therefore not innovative, right? So you'll want to be careful that, yes, you do have preliminary data, but it's really early, it's bench scale. You need to go to the next level, and you need that R&D money to provide you with the types of tests, validations that you'll need for that proof of concept in the phase one. And you've got some inklings, but you need to prove the concept. So you can't have so much preliminary data that the concept's already proven. So that's the balance between. Absolutely. In silico, totally fine. Yep.
Okay.
Totally fine. Yeah. And then the technological innovation, I'll just hit it again because it really is that important for NSF, really focusing in on what exactly is the innovation in the technology. The broader impacts are so much fun to talk about, and you certainly want to draw that connection for why this innovation will have such an impact on the world. But getting lost in talking about those impacts and not focusing enough on the technology itself is where I see a lot of people kind of missing the boat on what the requirements are, what the reviewers are looking for. They want a bit of a peek into that black box, and they're not just going to take your word that this will work, right? Just because you have this idea, they want to know that this idea will actually work. And so that's where the focus needs to be, is on that core of the technology innovation itself. Market pull, scale, those sorts of things are secondary. Good to have, definitely want to show that market potential, but these are not VCs. So it's a different focus. There's lots of different topic areas that you could align your proposal to. Um, there's just other topics if you're not sure. These are also really good to look at for examples of what they've funded in the past. And that's another thing to recommend here, is just go and look at what NSF has funded in the past in the SBIR program. And you'll see publicly available abstracts for their proposals. So find something that's related enough to what you are proposing, and get some ideas for what they've funded in the past. It will spur not only your thinking and what to focus on your framing of the proposal, but also the language that's used. It's really high risk, high reward language that they're using. And so that's a different frame than, say, going to investors, right? They're less interested in high risk, high reward, right? So this is a different audience. So we're going to tailor it to that. So seeing those examples of what's been funded can help you frame that language. And we've built this into our platform, but just so you know, just general best practices for you. There's lots of components here that it's all laid out in the solicitation. That's the other thing that I'll recommend, is to read the solicitation, the PDF document that the program posts. Read every bit of it. Here's a summary of kind of the key parts, right? The project pitch, up to 3,500 characters on the technology innovation. So you've got these different sections. They have different questions that are essentially being asked within each of those sections. And so you just want to be sure that you're addressing every question, every bullet point for each of those sections, and allotting the right page length accordingly for the weight of the importance of the section. For the full proposal, there's not only a 15-page document, but there's other attachments as well. So project summary, you're going to have key personnel, you'll need science CV, validated bio sketches, biographical sketches, bio sketches for short, current and pending support, collaborators and other affiliations, synergistic activities for each of the key personnel. So that's going to be at least your principal investigator, and then anybody else that you want to add as a key personnel you can. It can help to have partners that have really impressive bio sketches that you can include, and we can help you translate a CV into a bio sketch if they don't currently have that. And then, of course, references. There's a data management plan that you basically say not applicable and upload, but all of these different requirements, you just need to be aware of that there are other attachments. Although letters of support are not allowed for the NSF SBIR phase one, letters of commitment are required, and there's a difference. Letter of commitment would be from someone who is committing to be a consultant or play a role in the project as a third party So if they're not an employee of the company, they would be a third party. And there's also a limit to be aware of 1/3 of the budget can go to external third parties, and that's the maximum. So they really want the money to primarily go to your business. And then if you're having to contract out the work to consultants, it can't exceed 1/3 of your total budget. We have a demo that I don't think we have time for. Just looking at the clock, I'm gotta let me try showing a video. Let me see. Let me share a different screen. Okay. Can you see this video now?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Thanks. So essentially, this is once you're logged in, this is what you'll see. This is the grant search results. And then you click on write a proposal, and you can generate a draft by essentially uploading those existing documents that you have. Um, if you don't have anything previously written, another strategy that we use is we'll actually do interviews with people and then take the transcript from, an auto recording or other type of recording, and then upload the transcript in order to give it the material to generate a proposal. And then even if you have existing materials, but maybe things have changed since then, you can give it the additional focus to have the machine essentially highlight certain parts of those materials or downplay other parts. Like we've already moved on to a different focus of the application or a different strategy. You can essentially tell it to recast some of what was there in a different light. And so that allows you to essentially take existing material and go after a different solicitation, change the way that it's framed, and work on a different lane of research and development that's happening, so that you've got the different work, and you're not duplicating the same efforts on two different proposals. All right, let me go back to slide deck now. Sorry about that. Okay, can you see the slides now?
Yes.
Cool, thank you. Obviously, one of the first questions that we're asked is about security of data. We're going through SOC 2. Essentially, the way that the coding is done is that this is a private instance. Your information is not shared across any of the other clients. And we offer essentially the single sign-on. So I go through Gmail, and when I log in, it essentially sends a code to my Gmail, and I can only log in if I've got access to my Gmail, and then I'm in from there. And you can invite others to join your project across your team if you would like, and then again they have to do the single sign-on through the email. So a bit more about the program. We've created this program to be a 5-week program. You will end up going on your own pace, right? For when you have time to work on it. And this essentially creates for you a drip series that if you were to make this a high priority, you could get this done in 5 weeks, especially following along with the materials that we send out and the classes that we put on. You could absolutely get through all of the items. And I'm just realizing that we are actually over on time. So apologies for not getting through everything here. Are there any burning questions before we go? So we're here for you guys. I mean, anything you need with helping with developing these proposals for SBIR or other programs or any other agency, let us know. Stacy's the best person to get into contact with. We've got the cohort model classes coming up soon, or there's just more full enterprise engagements that I would lead for you as well. So lots of different ways that we're hoping to be of help to you all, and so just let us know what you need and how we can help. Yeah, so you will need a US based registered company. You can use a foreign based registered company if they're not on there's a particular list of companies that are not allowed, obviously, like North Korea, others that are on the no-go list. But for the most part, the easiest path is to have a US-based incorporation.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, all. Well, thank you so much. Great chatting with you. Take care.